And you learn how to read.
Well, and I remember when first she started explaining to me, I didn't know
Hello, my fellow Alaskans. Good evening and welcome to this Monday's broadcast of the Alaska School of Government. We are here at Real Life Church in Palmer, Alaska. Thank you guys all for being here this evening. Please don't forget to like and share. You'll be able to find this video on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and on Rumble within the next few hours. We really do appreciate it if you make sure that you subscribe and click that bell to be notified every time we go live. We have just a brief announcement that we'd like to make before we get into the breakdown that Kim Bergy is going to be giving us on how the BSA formula works. And again, take a moment right now, like, share this video. You won't hear this information anywhere else. The Alaska legislators will not take the time to break it down as simple as you're going to see here tonight. I will provide a copy of the form during the video so that if you want, snap a picture of the screen and you can always blow it up later and do the formula yourself and you can figure out how the BSA works. But you will get a step by step how the formula is calculated using this form to figure out how you get from $1,000 to over $2,000 in funding for a student. You know what they claim, $1,000 is what we want to increase the BSA formula to. And we only have basically 130,000 Alaskan students going to school right now, but somehow that 130 million, the increase is implied by $1,000 they claim is the increase, somehow miraculously jumps to a whopping $260 million once you apply the BSA formula that we're going to have broken down for us tonight. Again, please like and share. This video is on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook at Politadick and Politadick Unfiltered. You can always watch this live at Politadick.com. And this is where I'm going to switch the screen around and get this off of what's in front of there so that you guys can see me, and I'll talk here until Edna comes up in front.
Where do I start?
Okay, guys, sorry about that. This is what happens when you're a one-person crew trying to run the entire show. Again, thank you guys all for being here tonight. You can, again, find this at Politadick at YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, at Politadick. I also find it on Rumble in about 6 hours or so, and you'll find that at Politadick also. And you can go to our website at Politadick.com and watch this live right now on our website. We have a player there, and while you're there, please go to our support page, and this is why I wanted to flip things around. We really do need your help. We need your support. And the reason why is over the weekend I found that my First Amendment rights are under attack. And my right as freedom of the press is currently going to be challenged in the court of Alaska. And I'm just not too sure what I need to do here. Do I fight this to the bitter end? Or do I come back and say, I want to make this disappear, let's get rid of it? But I really do need to get some legal counsel before I go any further in my decision on what I do with what is under attack for my free rights as press to be able to report on the corruption within our state and around our country. And this is really what classic cancel culture is all about. First, they try to get you off of the platforms. They mark your information as fake news. Depending on what it is, Facebook or YouTube, they'll either ban you or label you, removing your videos or anything that you have written off, adding labels to it, declaring it as fake news or partially fake news. Click this link to see why. or they may just outright remove it and put you on a temporary ban from even being able to write anything or post anything because you have violated their community policies. Those are usually the first steps to the cancel culture out there that they try to do to you. So when that doesn't work, they start making threats. They start saying, well, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. And you either bow down to the threats or you stand up strong, you lift up your chin high up into the air and say, I'm above this, I know my rights, I'm going to stand for what's right, and I'm going to do what's right. And this is what we need to all be working for, and these are what the cancel culture out there is trying to take away from us. They don't want our voices. This is why they don't want to see us in the schools. Just speaking of schools, just like tomorrow, school board meeting in the Mat-Su Valley joint meeting with the Assembly Borough. And I feel it's going to be a really heated discussion going on tomorrow when they're discussing the budget and the books that are within the schools and the agenda that has been going on in play out here in the Valley, that as we keep digging deeper and deeper into why our schools are failing, it's amazing the stuff that has now come to the surface. In some ways, thank you, pandemic, for opening up Americans' eyes to what's really going on. But that's beyond the point right now. I mean, literally, I am under attack. My right as freedom of press, the oligarchy in control of Alaska, who loves to create the next king and queen of Alaska when it comes to the political environment, no matter where it's located at, say, the school boards, the assemblies, the municipality assemblies, community councils, board members on, say, like MEA Electric or the Fairbanks Electric Company. I could just keep going right down the list. If we don't start paying attention and making sure the right people, the people that have all Alaskans' best interests in mind, the future generations of Alaskans, our children's futures in mind, and start doing something about it, they're going to take these rights away. I've been an advocate fighter for the last 6 years now here in Alaska, exposing a lot of the dirt that the mainstream media wants to keep covered up and make sure that you do not get to hear. I live stream everything unfiltered and uncut. I let you make your own decision on what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and you can make up your own minds when you're done. But while I'm at it, I don't hesitate to give my own opinion. You guys all know that. I always have my own 2 cents to add into it. But just like you, I'm watching it unfiltered, uncut, getting it the way it should be, the way mainstream media should be responding to what's going on. And again, my First Amendment rights are being threatened right now. Someone wants me to shut up. There's somebody out there right now that does not want me printing the truth about the corruption within our state and within the political parties that are in control, making the kings and queens of the next people that are being elected here. And I need your help. Go to my website, click that support button. It's Politadick.com. Click that support button and please donate. I need to hire an attorney to go to the next steps. And looks like my time here has been cut off. I see Edna walking up front. We're at the Alaska School of Government at Real Life Church in Palmer, Alaska. We're here to hear from Kim Bergy about the BSA formula and how that works and get a complete breakdown on everything. Thank you guys all for being here again. And don't forget, like and share.
And have you all take your seats so we can get started. My husband's going to open us up with a scripture.
This is Ephesians 3:14. For this reason I bow my knee to the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, from whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named, that he would grant, that he would give to you, according to the riches of his glory, power to be strengthened by his Spirit in the inner man, and that Christ may dwell in your heart, through faith, that you being rooted and grounded in love may be able to comprehend with all the saints with the breadth, the length, the depth, and the height, and to know the love of Christ, which surpasses knowledge, that you might be filled with all the fullness of God. Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or imagine, according to the power that worketh in us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. If you all want to stand, and Lori, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Janet, did you want to come up and make your announcement?
Hi, Valley Republican Women of Alaska is conducting a raffle to benefit Region 2 because we're going to need lots of money for our Get Out the Vote efforts. And so we are auctioning off a cow. Cut in half, so there'll be 2 prizes, wrapped and frozen, ready for you to put in your freezer. And so there'll be two winners. And the drawing will be held April 14th at Mat-Su Republican Women's Club's event at the Palmer Depot. And you don't have to be present to win. And the tickets are $50. And I have tickets with me tonight, so come on down.
All right, thank you. Before we get into Kim talking about how the schools in Alaska are financed, we're going to ask CJ and Eric to come. They, along with Janet and Ron, were part of the 40-person delegation for Americans for Prosperity that went to Juneau. And it was, I believe, their first time in Juneau and in the legislature. So they're going to talk to you a little bit about that, and then we're going to continue. Go ahead.
Yes, it was our first time to Juneau, and it was incredible. Number one, it was awesome getting to partner with Americans for Prosperity. They had the same issues that we had, and so we partnered with them and went, and there were over 41 meetings set up for people to actually go and meet with the legislators. We were received well. Everybody was happy to see us there. It was, I think, good to see some, common friends that you hadn't seen for a while down the hallways, and so it was an interesting time. We had 3 main bills that we were supporting, and 3 we were opposing. The 3 that we were supporting, hang on a second. Let's see. There's a repeal of the Certificate of Need, House Bill 35, and House Bill 47, the Direct Health Agreement, and House Bill 52, No Patient Left Alone Act. I think if you guys were familiar with those bills, you'd agree as well that they were. But we also talked about the defined benefits, and we talked about the BSA increases. There were several of us that got to testify in front of the Education Committee on the BSA adjustments, and they weren't expecting us. So, and we were told we were the first conservative group to go to Juneau as a group like that. And so it was especially that many. Of course, there's always lobbyists there, and the unions are always there, but the conservative groups aren't normally seen. So it was very well received and a little shocking when they figured it out, because nobody knew we were going to be there until we were there. And it's like, what? So I give Americans for Prosperity and Bernadette Wilson a great big kudos, because she really put a lot of great things together, and she had us, how she was organizing everything went very, very well. So if you ever get an opportunity to go to Juneau, and I don't know if we didn't know it until recently, but the airlines will give you a constituent discount to go. So if you let them know you're going to Juneau, you get a discount. But I recommend that you go on the afternoon flight. Don't go in the morning. Because our morning flight took us around Juneau for an hour, and we couldn't get in because of fog. So then they took us to Sitka for another hour, and then we went to Ketchikan for what, 7 hours? You know, and I was just happy because I've not ever seen any place in the Southeast. So I got to see 3 of our communities in one day. It was lovely. So definitely go in the afternoon though. The other thing I'd like to bring up, I heard from Representative Allard's office today, and she's on the education, House Education Committee, and there's a House Bill 105 that we're supporting. It's an act relating to parental rights in a child's education, relating to access to school records, relating to sex education, human reproduction education, human sexuality education, relating to school disciplinary and safety programs, and providing for an effective date. So essentially, parents will have to know what's going on with their kids. That's a pretty big bill, and they need support. So when we were testifying for HB 65 on the BSA adjustments, everybody that was calling in and everybody I think that wasn't from our group was in favor of the bill, and we were opposing it. And all of them came from the education department somewhere, right? So they're going to probably do it again, and it would be great if we could also, you know, balance that and let them know that, no, we don't want that to happen either. You know, we want to support this. So Thursday at 5:15 is when this testimony is going to be needed. I'm going to try to get an action alert out through the Region 2 email, so hopefully if you're on the list, you'll get that, and if you guys get it, and pass it on to your friends too, so we can get as many people calling in on that. Other than that, I'm sorry. Did you want to say anything?
No, I think you covered most of it. I do have a quick testimony about Mike Coons called in as testimony, and every other word that Mike said was socialist or socialism. And in front of us was a big contingent of teachers union, and their response was he's probably a fascist book burner too. So it was kind of interesting to just kind of sit there and experience other people's reactions to the things that were happening. And they really did lose control. We were there, and you know, I guess the biggest realization that I had was it really isn't us against them. We just have to concentrate on a unified effort. If we have a unified effort, it freaks them out. Even if it's on 3 or 4 items that we did, you know, through Americans for Prosperity, we were walking down the halls and people looked at us with and they would shoot back into their office. Or there would be meetings that were scheduled that they would be canceled because they decided they didn't want to talk to us. It was an amazing thing, and I don't know what it started, but I believe something has shifted in Juneau, and it's a unified effort, and able to speak reason into chaos, because that's kind of what it was. And it was kind of neat to see who had the really nice offices, and then who the people that were in the really small closets. There's a diverse setting there, and I just want to encourage everybody to go be a part of it. We have made the commitment. We're going to go down again, and just because it's something that you talk about, but when you get down there and you do it, there's something that says, holy cow, this is really, really important. So I just that's my 2 cents. That's my thoughts.
It's House Bill 105, and the Senate bill is 96. And I did want to say too, that if anybody's interested in being a part of Americans for Prosperity, they offer incredible training. We've been through 2 or 3 of them now, and they really give some great teaching on how to do the testifying, how to do the things. It's really helpful for citizens to go through some of their programs. And then they really take good care of the people when they need you to be a part of it. We've done walk books with them, we've done phone banking with them, and they are just really a great program.
Do you know anything about who paid for those school officials to go to Juneau? Were they on their individual capacity, or were they there because of the school, so the taxpayers paid for it?
Most of the educators there were from Juneau, it appeared, but I have no idea on that. That would be a guess. But I know most of the unions do help those folks out. So, but remember, you got a constituent fair. Check it out. I think that's it, Mayor.
Oh, I'm just going to ask, information to get involved.
Where do you find the information to get involved?
You can go to Americans for Prosperity, Alaska.
Oh, okay.
Yep. It's just americansforprosperity.org or .com. I think it's .com.
Oh,
And I believe we'll probably have Bernadette here again at some point. But if you really are interested, get me your information and I'll pass it along to her so that her team can contact you. She has an exceptional team. They're very hard workers and they're very on point. They know what they're doing. It was just a great time to be with them.
cool.
Anybody else? I'm the mic runner too, so hang on.
I believe I've seen an office that says that name on it around Palmer, I believe.
It's closed.
Is it closed? Oh, good to know.
Yeah, now
They did have one on Palmer-Wasilla Highway, but but it's not there anymore.
they only have a single office in Anchorage now, and it's off Diamond Boulevard. Okay, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. So notwithstanding with the constituent fair, it's still pretty expensive to go to Juneau. You can throw down $1,000 without any problem at all. And so we were even talking earlier about the fact that maybe we'll put a jar in the back and have people just donate, and then if somebody and we would decide, the school government would decide on a couple bills or 3 bills we wanted people to testify on, and that would just help some people to take and go or something like that. So if there's any interest in that. So Kim, you want to come? So what she's going to talk about, the BSA, that's certainly a hot topic, as you heard from CJ and Eric, so.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Edna. Just a brief introduction. I'm Kim Bergy. Most of you recognize the last name because my husband is president of the school board. I also work in the education field. So if you ask me a question that I can't answer, I just know I won't answer because I still work in that field. So I have to give you information. Hopefully everybody got an opportunity to pick up a worksheet when you came in. It looks just like this. It's got a blank column down the side. If you have a cell phone in your pocket, please pull it out. You're going to need the calculator. You didn't know you were going to have to do math tonight, did you?
At least we have a calculator.
Yeah, everybody should have a calculator. Or at least if there's 2 of you sitting together, one run the calculator and one run the paper. So I'm going to talk about how Alaska's school foundation funding formula works. That's what we're going to do tonight, and we're going to go through there. If you can hit the next slide for me, please. So we're going to talk, you're going to get some new terminology. There's lots of acronyms in education. I'll try to explain those as we go. Why NOME on your worksheet? We use NOME as the example because NOME has every aspect of education within its district. You should have had a worksheet. You have a calculator on your cell phone. This is specific to current legislation. That's House Bill 65 and Senate Bill 52, and they are moving through the process, so just know you can check that process online at the state legislative website. The little graphic here, I chose that intentionally because we're taking the 30,000 foot view, and you can see some level of detail, but not a lot. We're not going to get way down into the weeds tonight. So we're going to try to stay at that high level so you guys can get an understanding. The next slide, please. This is a standard graph that you see in education when they do their presentations to the legislature. It's referred to as the pencil graph, and it's meant specifically to show what the base student allocation is. You'll hear me drop into acronym and call it the BSA. So it's got it from 2014 all the way up to 2024, and you'll notice the increase for 2024 is set at a $30 increase at this point. You'll see those little numbers up above the top of the pencils right here where the little, that's money that was given in those years outside of the formula. So it was given above and beyond as an allocation to be divided up between the schools. So if they tell you that there's flat funding the whole way across, if you see there was 20 million here, 30 million here, 57 million given here in 2023. So just know that you always have to ask the question, not only what was the BSA, but did they give any funding outside of the formula? Next slide, please. So this is the worksheet you have, except that last column I whited out so that you guys could have a spot to write. The first part of this you're not going to have to write, you just have to follow along. But we'll work all the way down through here, and then I'll show you how to do the calculation for both the Senate bill and the House bill estimated BSA numbers. Next slide, please. The first part of this is average daily membership. You hear us refer to it as the ADM. There's a 20-day count window that happens every October, and that is what determines the funding that each school gets. Not every state does it that way. There are lots of states that do a daily or a weekly calculation. Ours is a one-time in October calculation. So you can see on your worksheet up at the top, it says school name, and you got Nome Elementary, Nome Junior Senior High, Anvil, City Science Academy Charter School, and that's how many actual physical students they had in their building. Who can give me the math on that one? 690. Write that down. 690. Write that number down on your paper. Next slide, please. So here we're going to talk about school size adjustment. This can be really confusing for people because the way the school size adjustment works, if you're a little school, you get more dollars per kid. If you're a big school, you get fewer dollars per kid. Does that make sense to everybody? Trust me, that's how the calculation works. So if you're, and you have different school size adjustments depending on whether you're brick and mortar, charter, or correspondence and homeschool. I included the reference here just so you have it. It's not on your worksheet, but just so you guys could see, it is a calculation based on the size of the school. So if you have between 10 and 19.99 kids, your formula comes out to 39.6. And you'll see why we get this in just a little bit. Next slide, please. The hold harmless, you'll hear people talk about hold harmless when you have a drop in school population. So if you have a big drop in school population, then they are eligible for hold harmless. What that does is there's some eligibility criteria you have to meet in order to be in a hold harmless status. And then it's a 3-year step down process so that your funding isn't cut drastically right away, it's stepped down over time. Next slide, please. All right, you ready for the middle of your worksheet? This is the part where it looks at Nome specifically. And then you've got your 690 kids, and then they do your school size calculation. So let's look at Nome Elementary, this line right here. Goes from 330, they run it through the school size calculation, and now all of a sudden we have how many children?
400.
We have different numbers.
Yeah. I think we can follow them.
How did that, oh, I see. Oh, because this is the 22 worksheet, and they posted a new one online, and I copied the new one online. So this is the 2023 one, so it's even higher than the one you have in your hand, which is 2022's calculation. So then you have Nome, their junior, senior high school goes from 300 up to 374, goes from 60 up to 70.8. They have homeschool kids, but they're not accounted for yet, so don't worry about them, but keep them in mind because they're coming. So we started out with 690, and we're all the way up here to 849.1. That's just going through the school size calculation, okay? Have I lost you yet? Any questions? Yes?
So, what you're saying is that's the actual, that's the objective, theoretically, actual enrollment?
The actual,
Calculated and say that, oh no, we don't have that many people, we have actually this many people?
the actual number of children enrolled is 690. That's this number right here in the middle.
That's not projected, that's actual.
That's what they use as their actual. In this example, they call it their projected. So 690 right here, these are your actual students in the classroom. When you get over here, these numbers are what they did the school size calculation with. So that's the first step in the process. It's to compensate for the school size calculation is to compensate for the variances in operations in the different sizes of schools. ICER is the one that helped develop this formula. It's the Institute of Social and Economic Research out of the university. So next slide, please. Here's the next multiplier. We have multipliers as we go through here. This multiplier is called the district cost factor. And if you look at this little map here, you see big dollar signs and little dollar signs. The bigger the dollar sign, the bigger the cost factor. The littler the dollar sign, the smaller the cost factor. Anchorage is 1.0 on their cost factor. Matsu here is 1.07, and Nome is 1.45. But you can see they go all the way up as high as 2.116. And this is part of an annual report that goes to the legislature, so just know the legislators get this information. So if you look back, we did our school size adjustment, and you'll hear that referred to as the AADM, or Adjusted Average Daily Membership. Then you apply your district cost factor. So for Nome, it's 1.45. So you take this 849.1 children, and you multiply them times 1.45, and now where are we? How many kids did we start with? 690. All right, next slide. We have children that need special support in schools. And so the special needs funding covers special education, bilingual education, some vocational education, and it covers gifted and talented education. That cost factor is 1.2. So we take that number we just finished with, the 1,231.2, and we multiply it times 1.2, and now we're up to how many children? All right, you ready for the next slide? We're not done yet. Go ahead, hit the next slide. Now we're at vocational and technical education. You'll hear this referred to, I use the graphic of CTE because that's how they refer to it now. It's referred to as career and technical education, but it's what most of you in the room know of as vocational education. And so these funds are specifically targeted for those grades 7 through 12. So the cost factor here is a 0.15. So you take that number that we left on the last screen and we multiply it times 1.15 or 1.015, and now we're at, and how many did we start with? 690. Next slide.
So why is that not only applied to the high school instead of to all students?
Because the way the formula is written, it is applied to all students. That they give us no other justification than that. That's what it says in this lovely little, you guys can get this book online. It's called Public School Funding Program Overview, and they just updated it in January. So it's on the State Department of Education website, and you just do you just Google State of Alaska Department of Education and Early Development, or if you want the shortcut, State of AK Deed School Finance, and then you'll get it. All right, now we're into what are called intensive services. These are for our special needs kids that need a lot of support. So these kids, this count is taken on the last of the 20-day school count period in October. So wherever those kids are on that day and in attendance, that's where they're accounted for. And so you have one student, and it's multiplied by 13. So Nome has 15 students, so 15 times 13 is 195. So what they do here, in this case, it's not multiplication in this column, it's addition. So you add the 1499.6 plus the 195, and you should get the 1694.6. So keep going. Next slide, please. Now we're at our correspondence or homeschool kids. And they only count as 0.9. So if you had 10 homeschool kids here, for them to count in the calculation, we'd have to take one kid away, because they don't count one kid when they do this calculation, okay? Because it's only a 0.9. So Nome has 25 correspondence kids, so they multiply that times 0.9 and they get 22.5. And this one is addition again over here in this column. So now look how many kids we're up to.
1717.
Hey Kim, also we asked, along with Americans for Prosperity, asked the legislatures to consider fully funding this, because it's a program that works, and it's the only one that's not fully funded.
Well, it also places value on children, and you know, you got one child here and you're only worth 0.9, and you got another child here because you attend a brick and mortar school, you're worth 1.0. Some kids might, and parents might look at you a little funny. All right, these guys are added in, not multiplied in. So next slide, please. And then if we get back over here to our adjusted average daily membership, you can see what we started with. We added our 20 homeschool kids, rough numbers here, and then you get that 17 minus the 710, and how many did we increase by?
Almost 2.5 times.
Yeah, more than double what we started with. So when somebody says that $1,000 increase to the BSA is only $1,000 per kid, what's your answer?
BS.
Because it's 2.42 times greater than what we started with. So, next slide, please. So if we take, and we're gonna do the calculation with the math to calculate what's called the basic need. This is what the state defines as the basic foundational need that a district has for funding. So you take that total district ADM, you multiply it times the base student allocation, and then you get the total basic need.
Wow.
So for Nome City Schools, this is what they get. Not quite. There's more wrinkles in our paper here. Next slide, please. Yes. Because Nome is an incorporated area, they have a required local contribution, just like we do here in the borough. We have a required local contribution. And I put the information up there because I know some of you have asked me this before as to how they define that. And so I put the definition up there that the state has in their book, and that's how they define it. That it's the equivalent of 2.65 mil, and it's not to exceed 45% of the district's basic need. So here's the tricky part. Yes, the community contributes, and they contribute this amount. That's their minimum local contribution. But then the state subtracts that minimum local contribution from their basic need. So that makes that 10 million drop down. And you can see here, I pulled this out of the Mat-Su Borough School District's site, so you can see how they do. This is the bottom, the minimum basic need, and this is what they call the cap. And the local municipality can fund anywhere in between. They cannot go below this amount, and they cannot go above this amount per state statute. When you hear of other districts being funded to the cap, that means they're being funded at this blue line. The district here, they've been responsible with their ask. The borough has been responsible in their looking at that, and they've kept them under the cap. And I can't remember what the percentage is. I want to say it's like 70%, but I don't remember. So, and these funds, remember, are subtracted. So if you're doing the math on your paper, or look at your paper, you can see these are subtracted. So let's go to the next slide, because there's another piece here that gets subtracted. We have a lot of native lands, and we have a lot of federal land here in Alaska. In order for us to have those, we have people who live on federal land, people who work on federal land, or on native lands. And so we have what are called federal impact aid dollars that those people generate because they live and work on federal lands or on native lands. So this amount of money coming into Nome is this much. And so that, again, is subtracted out of what the state is providing because it's considered federal money coming in. So that drops them, remember they were at 10 million. And by the time you take away the local contribution and the impact aid, now they're down to 8 million. All right, next slide. And then Alaska has had for years, as long as I've been working in education, that I can remember doing administrative level stuff. They've had this little quality schools fund where it's a straight $16 per student on your adjusted daily membership. So here, you take that 16, multiply it times the number of kids, and then this money they get to have added back in to their basic need. What is it for? That's a good question, Lloyd. It's meant to be quality schools money, which usually you're using that to address some type of a need that you've identified in your school district. Next slide, please. So now we're to what is called the state aid entitlement. So it's your basic need minus your local contributions, minus 90% of your impact aid, plus the quality schools money, and then you're here. This is the total that no one gets. So it went back up just a little bit because of the quality schools funds. Yes, sir.
But doesn't they still get their local money on top of that, don't they? They're not taking it from the taxpayers and then not doing anything with that money they take. Because I look at my taxes and it says this is my portion that's going to schools.
So let's go, can we go back 2 slides? One more, sorry, it's 3. So when you have, that's your required local contribution. Is your local taxes that you pay to the borough. So right here, you deduct the required local contribution. So what happens is the state says in your basic need pot, you got this much money. Your borough's going to contribute this much money. So we're taking this equivalent back, and that goes into the pot to bring it back up.
So their amount remains the same.
So the amount remains the same.
Okay.
Well, close to it. It depends on what. Yeah. So can we go back to where we were? One more. Kim? Yes.
We have another question.
How about the federal funds?
The federal funds, once they come in, and then the state deducts them from the basic need. So they're considered pass-through dollars. You'll hear that term, pass-through, because they come to the state. It reduces the state's amount of money that they're paying as they're passing through those federal dollars. So now let's take a look. Down at the bottom of your worksheet, this is where the math gets interesting with the blank spaces that I left you, because if you draw a little line down through the middle of that, and then you do your calculation for House Bill 65, which is a BSA of $7,210, or if you choose to do the Senate bill numbers, which is $6,960, which is $1,000, and this one is $1,250. And then if you do the math with your calculator, you should get numbers that look like these. So, whereas before when we looked at this, remember, it was 10 million. Here, with the House bill numbers, it jumps to 12. With the Senate bill numbers, it jumps to, well, almost 12. A hair over and a hair under. And then if you subtract these two that need to be subtracted, you go from 8, almost 9, to 11, or just over 10. So it's a significant increase when you look at it, just because of the change in the number of children when you go through all those multipliers. And if you want to figure out what the cost is per child, you take this number, or any of these along the bottom here, and divide them by how many kids did we start with?
690.
690, but don't forget to add your 25, I think it was, homeschool? I think 25 is what's on your worksheet, I can't remember.
715.
Yeah, so if you divide these numbers by the total number of kids, actual children in the building, that's what your cost per student is.
Is it safe to say that's cost per student per location?
It is a little bit per location, because remember on this, a second or the third slide? Let me look.
From looking at your sheet, it looks like each location has a different operating cost per child.
Yes.
Each one will, but in addition to that, the district cost factor impacts that. And that's that page that had the map with all the map of Alaska with all the different sized dollar signs on it.
I'm a little slow, so I worked off of the 2022 sheet. And if I take the 8,600,000, the bottom figure, add in the local contribution and the federal impact aid divided by,
Remember the required local contribution and the federal impact aid is a subtraction from that initial
Right.
dollar amount.
right, but that's still being put into the school.
No, it's not.
So the Nome Borough is required to contribute 1.2 million, but they don't actually do it.
What happens is that money goes to the school district. And then what happens is when the state goes to give them their state monies, they say, well, how much is your borough giving you? Oh, by the way, we're going to take that much out of what we're going to send you.
Right, but the borough is still giving that money to the schools.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
So add that in.
You don't add it in because the state takes it out.
We're talking state money.
So when you go here,
It's all state.
when you go here to this number where it says Nome's basic need, the basic need is what the state calculates that that school district needs to operate. If somebody else is going to contribute money, i.e. the borough or the federal government, the state is going to withhold that much money before they give you what they're going to give you. Yes.
How does this differ with the unincorporated community? Let's say like Glen Allen.
That's a very good question. How does this contribute when you have communities that are not in an incorporated area? Those are what are called rural education attendance areas. So let me look at I can't remember if I put this in a slide or if I just made a note on here. I just made a note on here, so let me grab my note. Because this will be helpful. I know it'll answer your question. I just don't know what I did with my note. Oh, here it is. So there are 503 schools in our state, making up 53 school districts. Now, some of you may have heard the number that there's 54 school districts, but there's really only 53 school districts plus Mount Edgecombe, which is a state-run school. That's why people often think there's 54. The school districts range in size from one single school site to up to 98 schools, which is the Anchorage School District. 34 districts are in organized areas, so they have a required local contribution. 19 of those are boroughs, 15 of those are either home rule or first-class cities. You just asked me about Glen Allen, and what about those unincorporated areas? There are 19 rural education attendance areas in our state. What that means is that for those REAAs, on this chart here, this where it says Nome's basic need, the state fully funds those REAAs.
Okay, so I don't have any kids. I'm not only funding Nome, I'm double funding for places like Glen Allen.
You're contributing, yes, to both places.
Well,
Because these guys in the example of Nome, you're contributing less because they have a local contribution that takes part of their state aid away. And then the REAAs, you're paying the full part because they have no required local contribution. Yes, sir.
So basically what you're saying is we're taking our taxes and contributing it towards our children's education, but they're removing the funding the state would have gave us because of our contribution. And then what they took away from us, the places that don't have property taxes, they're just giving them that state money, basically the taxes we paid to those other unincorporated areas.
That's correct.
It's called socialism.
And then something I didn't mention at all in here is that transportation funding is separate. So not every school district in our state gets transportation funding, but it's done through a different funding mechanism than this.
For the same number of students?
So here's my note to myself. Transportation funding for FY23, which is our current school year, is $71.8 million, and it's for all but 5 school districts in our state.
Huge. How many snow machines could we buy?
I don't know the answer to that question, Lloyd. You got the calculator. I don't. Lloyd wanted to know how many snow machines we could buy.
Let them all come to school.
So Kim, do you have, I figured the difference, or the, under HB 65, just for Nome, will be an additional $2,146,000, $246,375. Or under SB 52, $1,717,000. Do you have a number for what it will be for the whole state?
I didn't do that math, but I know somebody who did.
$260 million. $260 million. It'll be anywhere from $260 million to $557 million.
And that's more.
Yes.
In addition to what we're already paying.
In addition to what we're paying.
It's only money.
You sound like my husband.
I've got another question on this side. I just know his voice is soft, so.
How much of an increase in the children's education levels are we gonna get? We're really at the bottom right now in the United States. So for $200 million or $500 million, are the kids gonna get smarter? Because apparently, we're spending a lot of money at it and we're not fixing the problem.
As far as what you're going to get in return on that investment, that's up to each individual district. I can't answer that. Honestly, I can't answer that because I don't know what each individual district is going to do with it.
Well, and the quality of education is not from the money, it's from the teachers.
That's correct. The national research clearly shows that if you want to make an impact on what children are learning and the quality of education that they're getting, the number one factor in that is the teacher.
And the number one factor to change the educational quality of the teacher is how many parents show up in their classrooms. And here's the thing, and most people don't know this, but even if you do not have children in that classroom, you have the right to show up and be a part of that classroom, as long as you're not disruptive. That's what holds teachers accountable, is when we show up and say, we're paying. I just ran the calculations for Nome, and this is pathetic. According to our handout, it's $5,930 for the base allocation. But according to 2023, it's $5,960 for the base allocation. That's a $30 difference. What that actually translates out to is $194.98 increase per student in Nome. So they only got a $195 increase per student for how many millions of dollars? For $10, $11 million. It's ridiculous.
So can we go to the next slide if there's no more questions?
We've got one more.
Oh, okay. It better not be Tom asking me a question.
I don't have a question. My comment is just that in those bills, there's nothing stating anything about accountability or better results or anything that we're going to see results from for this amount of money. There's nothing in there.
You are correct. There is nothing in the bill that speaks to accountability.
Well, and there is no accountability at all for government-provided services unless you individually sue someone for failure or breach of their fiduciary responsibility. It's the only way to hold them.
And I don't know, Mayor Edna, how are we doing for time?
Yes.
Till about 8:15, 8:20, and then wrap it up with any additional questions.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment. It's not just the teacher that needs to make sure the kids do their schoolwork. It helps to have parents that are willing to encourage the child and teach them and help them to read or have books around or whatever. Because when you have 35 or 40 students, it's hard to do that many students and make sure they do know. And you do, like he said, you need parents getting involved in the school and going to the schools.
Yes, and it's also about what is being taught during the school day. There are only so many instructional minutes in each day, and a lot of people don't understand that you have to guard those instructional minutes, because as soon as you start adding fluff, you just took away instructional time. You add more fluff, you take away more instructional time. The more minutes you take away from instruction, the less learning is happening. The more teacher professional development you have that is happening during the school day and they're pulling those teachers out of the classroom, the fewer instructional minutes you have. So it's very, very important to guard those instructional minutes that teachers have with students.
Are you going into a different phase other than the finances right now?
I'm going to talk just a little bit about a few of the pieces of legislation that I think it's important for everybody to be aware of. So
Then my question is how much is the student or the teacher getting as far as an increase because of what we have here? Is that $194 that we're talking about?
there is no guarantee that the increase will make it all the way to the classroom. And that I can't be more honest with you than that, because those decisions are local control decisions. They're made at the individual school district level. The school board and the superintendent and their staff make those decisions.
And we know by history, says the guy who knows more about Colorado than Alaska, in Colorado, 42% of all allocated funds are completely disappear on administrative expenses.
Yeah, and the one piece that I can tell you is that a few years ago, I don't have the exact date in my head, but we used to have what was called the 70-30 rule here in Alaska. We had to, as district administrators, guarantee that 70% of the funds that we were given were going to the classroom.
It should be.
And right now, there aren't a lot of districts that are fully meeting that, but again, that rule is no longer on the books. It's really about where their school board is at with being accountable for the funds that they're charged with using in their district.
Then there's no accountability.
I got a question. Who was it that took away the 70-30 rule? I mean, how does that go away?
The legislature. That was a state statute and it was a rule in the book and it got taken away.
Has anybody presented anything as far as reducing the amount of administration and that money going to the teachers and the students? Of that going to the teachers and the students? Is there any?
I haven't seen any legislation going through like that, Loy, so I don't know. I do know that different districts, depending upon their school board, and how they monitor that with their superintendent. Some of them are more actively monitoring it than others, but I can't give you any details because I'm not knowledgeable on all of the districts on how their internal operations are.
I heard that Hawaii has a whole bunch of different districts, but they only have one superintendent to be able to deal with all of them. And here we've got, what do you say, 52 plus 1?
53 plus.
53 plus 1?
Yes, 53 plus 1.
Assistants.
Assistant administrators at our school borough.
For this borough, okay.
So just a few pieces of legislation. You have House Bill 31, which has to do with the Alaska Performance Scholarship. They're looking to increase that dollar amount. They're looking to change the eligibility requirements and to make it more broadly available for a longer time period. So right now kids have 6 years and they're wanting to allow them 8 years to be able to use it. And they're also looking at making it so that it's usable not just in state, but also out of state. House Bill 44 has the cultural education program standards built into it. But the other piece that's in there is it has an extra $1,000 for every student in grades K through 3 that is deemed not proficient in reading.
So that's a 90% increase then.
But that's specific. They were specific in that language that it's those children in grades K through 3 that are not proficient in reading. That fourth graders weren't included, sorry.
Too bad.
So I haven't seen when the testimony is on that one. So we'll have to watch and see when that one comes up. House bills, oops, go ahead.
Where it says establishing a cultural education program, do you know what that is? Is it
It's the talk about having cultural standards built into curriculum. So there's a lot of call for cultural standards, especially for rural Alaska, where we're serving a lot of the Alaskan Native population. But they're looking at developing those standards. There are some standards already available. If you go on the state website, under the standards page, you'll see them. But I think they're due for a rewrite, and I think that's part of what this is.
So it isn't like CRT or...
Not based on what was written in the language of the bill.
But it could possibly cover that eventually?
It depends on who's on that development team. I don't know who's going to be part of that team. And then House Bill 105, which CJ already mentioned, that's the parental rights. I think one of the important pieces in the parental rights bill is that parents get an explicit list of the curriculum that's going to be used for the instruction. Right now, it just says that parents are notified. So I think that if you want to testify on that one, that would be a positive piece to testify on.
Is this the one that says that you have to opt in rather than opt out?
This one gives you opt out, correct, Tom? I think it's opt out.
Kim, on House Bill 69, what I remember you said earlier is that some of the home rule and first-class cities do have their own school district. So say a first-class city did have their school district, and now they go so they are classified as a second-class city. Do you know then, do they go into the unorganized area, and so the state then would be picking up all of that education, or are you that I'm not familiar with that.
I can give you a specific example of this because this impacts the district that I work for.
Okay.
So we have a neighboring community. Their community has shrunk to the point that they're under the size requirements to be a first-class city. And so they have requested, and it's a lengthy process for them to request. The local government has to say yes. The school board has to say yes. They have to talk to the school board over here at the neighboring district and say, we want to be part of your district. And then this district has to say, yes, we'll accept you as being part of our district. But there's no mechanism to go from a large city to a smaller city on the books. And so they have to put this on the books before they can reclassify their city. And we're seeing that in multiple places in rural Alaska where the communities are shrinking. And so what that'll do is, in this particular case, the community that we're working with, they don't have enough local tax base to fund their schools for minimum operations. But by coming together with our district, which we're in the same region, we serve the same area, we're very familiar with the operational costs and all of that. It's something that we can provide an extra support for that community without too much impact to our budget. Yes, CJ?
If it takes 3 years to recognize a decrease in population, how long does it take to recognize an increase in population?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Because if you're in the situation you just explained, why would anybody say no to taking on these other kids? Because you get more money for your school, whether it goes to the other kids or not.
I don't know. I just know that that community has shrunk to the point, and I don't work with that part of our district, so I don't have all the inner workings. But I know that the community has shrunk to the point that they are looking to do something else because they can't meet the basic requirements for their children in their schools. And so the only way for them to do that is to downsize their city government so that they can then be part of our district. And it makes sense when you look at where regionally where they're located, because right now they're one of those single site school districts. And single site school districts have it the most difficult of all of the districts in our state. Because they're expected to do all of the same tasks that all of the other districts do, but usually they have one person who is their, essentially their superintendent, principal, district, everybody. And they do all the federal reporting, all the state reporting, everything. It's a plate with a mountain of peas, and you gotta make sure none of them fall off. All right, if we go to the next slide, this was all the House legislation. This is all the Senate education. So Senate Bill 24, I haven't checked this week to see if that one has moved anywhere, but it's one that's relating to mental health education in the schools. I have not read that in a ton of detail, but those of you that are more knowledgeable in the mental health arena might want to take a look at that. Senate Bill 29 is the civics education bill. This one they're wanting to require that all students that graduate from high school take a civics class with a grade of a 70% or better. The curriculum, the grade, and all of that has to be on their diploma or on their transcript, And if they don't meet those requirements, then they can't graduate. We've already been through that once, and they had to backtrack on it with the high school graduation qualifying exam. So this is a little bit of a step back in time. I can see the need for the civics education, but usually that's part of the social studies curriculum in a school district. Senate Bill 43, that's health and personal safety education. Again, that's one you'll want to read through and see where you stand on that. It looks at health and personal safety and specific instruction in those areas all the way down to, I believe, grade 4. It might be lower than that. 56, Senate Bill 56 is again the Alaska Performance Scholarship. It's the matching one for the one in the House. Senate Bill 79 is the matching for the reclassification of first-class cities. And then again, Senate Bill 96 matches 105 on the House side for parental rights. So now, next slide. This time, I want you to turn and talk to your neighbor, somebody that's like maybe behind you or in front of you, but not beside you. What's your aha? What's your question? What's your takeaway? And your overall reaction. Share it with each other.
The question.
What you have to remember this weekend.
Yeah.
You're giving more money, you're getting less.
Yeah.
So, that's to me, and that's the education system.
Well, yeah. That's what the aha is. The aha is.
We're being scammed.
Your aha is bad words we can't say to church.
That's the aha.
We are being scammed. There's no incentive for the teachers to teach the kids what they need to know. I want the right change.
I think it's just disgusting. I don't even want to talk about the school.
I don't see anything. What cracks me up is I take your money
and testify,
because you donated.
which I've done multiple times. Oh, sorry.
All right, can I have your attention back, please? And because it's 8:13, you guys get to share your aha. Who on this side wants to share their aha?
Well, you didn't say it was going to be a test, no wonder.
Yeah, we're not doing anything.
Who wants to share an aha on this side? No ahas on this side? Candy, you want to share?
Aha question.
Hey, Candy.
Does this funding cover healthcare insurance that go out of the team?
Yes,
Or
the
the
funding
employees.
that's here covers all of the costs in a school district. So it covers their health insurance and all of that.
Pension included.
Yes, they have a contribution part for their pension as well. An aha from the middle section. None?
How,
Go ahead.
how'd they get away with it?
What do you mean?
Well, because they're not representing what is actual. How do they, since the numbers are not representing actual bodies in the shop, if you will, bodies in the school, how is this allowed to happen?
Because this is the formula that is in state statute and on the books.
And how many people know about this?
Well, more tonight.
Thank you.
Because it is very confusing for a lot of people, and until you actually walk through it, a lot of people don't understand it.
I was just wondering, how long has this statute been in effect?
I would have to go back and look, but I'm not 100% sure. I've been in education for a long time, and I can't remember when they first put this on the books. Do you remember, Tom?
It's known for a long.
Early 2000s, he said. This side.
Yes, thought here is that the 20 days in October is a big deal for school districts. It's not September, it's not December, it's October.
October is the most important month of the school year because it is what determines your funding for the entire school year. And in case most of you don't know, the population in Alaska is very transient.
Yeah. So is that the least disruptive 20-day window?
I don't know how that 20-day window was decided, but I know it's after hunting season. Most people are usually home in October, and those that snowbird don't usually snowbird till November or December, so it could have been picked intentionally.
Thank you.
You had a question, sir?
Well, actually, a comment.
This formula actually showed up in many, many other states. And it was a response to the first time in the 90s when the formula originally started. And it was a response to the push for the voucher program. Because it allowed the states that did do vouchers to only give, for example, the 5,900 instead of the full 14,000. It's horrible.
I don't know where it originated. I was too young then. I didn't know all that information.
I think she did.
No, I didn't know where it originated.
I would like to see some push into private funding for private schools or funding for religious schools.
That would be a conversation to have with the legislature, because right now we're not able to do that.
It's a conversation we have to have with Sullivan and Murkowski because of the 1965 Act. Because the people in education made sure that they did not give money to private or religious schools. It's in the Act. So we need to change that because education is
I don't have
worse.
the power to change that. So.
No, we don't. We are the ones that have to do that with our Congress.
We need homeschool kids counted as a whole kid.
We need them to keep the academic scores high.
It's actually is.
All right. It's 8:18. Mayor Edna, I'm going to turn it over to you shortly.
With the big push to do the student count in October, we know that the NEA organization, the unions out there, all do a big, huge campaign, advertising push left and right, everywhere they can. Make sure your students are in the seat so that they are counted. How much does the chronic absenteeism of 80 or 28% of the students in Alaska reported every year? Is that affected by making sure the count is in a narrow window that every organization in the book is making sure their children are there to be counted versus the 28% of the time the students aren't even showing up, 28% of the students aren't showing up?
You hit on a really good point, and that is attendance. Attendance has been an issue in our state for a long time, and it again goes back to the number of instructional minutes you have in a day with a student, and if they're absent, they're missing those instructional minutes. As far as how it impacts count, every district in our state has a 10-day window. If a student is absent for 10 days, they can be dropped off the books because they've had 10 consecutive absences. Up until they've had 10 consecutive absences, we're required to keep them on the books unless they physically submit a withdrawal form.
If they leave after that counting period, are they dropped from the numbers?
Automatic.
Are they still automatically still included?
If they are enrolled for the 20-day count in October, they are counted as being present in that school count for the entire year, even if they're being served by another district over here. It's just that that district got no money for them, but they still have to provide the service.
I would like to be really clear on where the money goes, if that's possible. Is it basically just salaries for all the teachers and their benefits?
That varies from district to district. On average, you could say about 80%. Well, it's probably not even that low. I don't even know. I don't know that I could give you a good number, but if you look, all the districts have annual audit reports, and those annual audit reports give that type of information. On the State Department of Ed website, when you look at the reports that they give to the legislature, they give you those average numbers over the state, so you can gather some of that information if you know where to look. But we don't have a statewide mechanism or a statewide dashboard for you to be able to see all of that information.
You had mentioned earlier that the transportation funding is tracked differently from this funding. So where exactly does that come from? Does that come from the state or from the borough? mill rate funds?
The transportation funds come from the state, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure, some of those might also be federal pass-through, but I don't know for sure.
So what happens to all that money that's not used during the strike when the buses aren't operating?
That's the one thing about transportation funds, is they are designated funds, which means they can only be used for transportation.
Okay, so they're held and they just used later, or roll
Yeah,
over to the next year?
Yep, they would roll to the next year.
Okay, thank you.
The part that you have to be careful when you talk about transportation funds is because the amount of transportation funds that individual districts get, it doesn't always cover the cost of what they have to pay to provide transportation. So oftentimes districts have to take money from their general fund and put it in their transportation fund to fully cover that cost. All right, Mayor Edna, it's yours.
Tom, did you have?
I had one quick question.
Okay.
So during COVID, during COVID and the lack of children present, how did we work this out? How did we do the formula? Did we do it based on the previous year?
No, it was based on the children that were enrolled in that school district during that time period. Many of the schools had digital learning going, and so any child, any parent that had signed their children up for that school during that time period and before that time period, they were counted in that October count.
So basically, we had no movement during the COVID years.
Correct.
Technically. Children didn't change school districts.
Oh, yes, they did.
A lot of Anchorage people came here.
No, you said there wasn't a lot of movement. There was a ton of movement. And that movement was from public brick and mortar school to homeschool and to private school.
That COVID didn't start until after October, isn't that correct, when it first came?
COVID started in March of 2020.
One last quick question. On this chart with all the pencils, where does the outside funding come from?
On that pencil chart, that chart is only meant to show you what the base student allocation is. John, are you asking about that money that's listed up at the top?
Yeah.
That is a Senate or a legislative appropriation for that year.
Wow.
So the legislature collectively agreed that they were going to provide that much money more than what the base student allocation provided.
30 million, 57 million.
But why?
Where's it going?
Wow.
I wanted to make one comment too. When we were testifying for House Bill 65, all of the calls that came in over the hours and hours, the things that we kept hearing is, but our pool's not going to be able to be funded, our sports are not going to be able to be funded, all of these other things are not going to be able to be funded, but never once did we hear anything on an administrator. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's one of the arguments they've had. The BSA hasn't increased, but like that figure you just saw, John, wherever you are up at the top, I think for the last several years, the legislature has done sort of a bulk money to them. So they have gotten extra money even though they haven't increased the BSA. Yeah.
They call those one-time monies.
Yeah, one time. Let's give a hand for Kim. Oh, I'm sorry, just a minute. CJ?
One more question.
Sure.
You said there was a transition towards homeschooling and private schools. Have you seen a transition towards better results lately? I'm just curious.
Better results in regards to what?
Well, I mean, those families it might be new to them with the whole homeschooling thing, but maybe they figured it out after a year or two. Are these students, have you seen a shift in comprehension is maybe towards the bottom? Maybe some of those rates are raising?
You have a lot of parents that are always very vested in their children and how well their children are doing. So what we see in homeschool is that those parents are putting forth the effort, they're dedicating the time and the resources necessary for their children to succeed.
So, and as most of you know, I think in the Matsu Borough, the Matsu Central School, which is the correspondence school, is the largest school we have in the borough. And that's why, you know, we're going to build them a new building, debt-free, over at the end of Pioneer Peak School District. Pardon?
Give them one of the colony schools, take that off the taxpayers, pay for that one.
What college?
Like Colony Middle School, it's in the center of the group between Palmer and Wasilla. Just give them a facility, then they'll have a gym, they'll have the track and everything right there in the area.
What are we going to do with the colony school students?
Well, apparently they're going to other schools.
No, I don't think Colony is losing. Maybe Palmer High is losing some people, but I don't think it's enough to be able to.
I would imagine.
Tom, how many students do we have enrolled? How many thousand students do we have enrolled in Matsu Central? Can you remember?
2,400, I think.
2,400. So that's bigger than any school, brick and mortar school capacity that we have. And right now we're leasing the land that's next to the LIO, which is what, $500,000? Yeah.
20 years too.
Yeah. Chris, do you have a question?
Well, who's funding the outside sources of schools, like IDEA Homeschool and these other homeschools?
We have
the expert here.
There you go.
So you hear all about the statewide homeschools. You've got IDEA, you've got Raven, you've got Denali Peak, there's a whole bunch of them, PACE. They're all funded by the state. Those are all state dollars. And they count at that 0.9. Every child that's enrolled there counts as a 0.9. Where you have to be careful is you have a lot of charter schools that have homeschool in their name. And they get to count their kids through all the multipliers.
So,
1+, right?
So IDEA doesn't get, so if I understood you correctly, IDEA, because it is a state homeschool program.
It's a statewide homeschool program
Statewide.
run by a district within our state.
Okay, so do they get to count their students to go through the multiplier?
No.
They only get to count them as a 0.9.
They only get to count them as a 0.9.
The least amount of funding goes to the brightest kids.
Yep.
That's it, that's the problem.
That's the takeaway, yep. That's the takeaway.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Let's give it up again. So I know we have some people who wanted to make announcements. Candy does, okay.
CJ mentioned that about HB 105, this public testimony, March 30th, Thursday at 5:15, regarding sex reproduction education in schools. Also, the same day at 3 o'clock is 3 bills. Public testimony is open for all 3: election interference, fraud, misconduct, voting machines and vote tally systems, elections, ballot voting, security. So,
And what committee is that in, Candy?
Looks like it's State Affairs Standing Committee.
Okay.
That's HB 130, 131, and 132. So also, I was gonna say that Moms for Liberty, I've been handing these out, a lot of people are aware of this. And they don't have an Alaska state chapter yet. Moms for Liberty is nationally, reading from their card here, Moms for Liberty is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. So if anyone wants to have these cards and see how there could be a unity of other people that would like to start an Alaska chapter. So they had a significant, there's a woman with Moms for Liberty spoke before Congress about parental rights, and I watched her video and get their information through Liberty Council, which is a Christian legal group nationally.
Okay. And for those of you that don't know, the Assembly and the school board have a joint meeting tomorrow night starting at 6 o'clock at the school district's headquarters in Palmer. And so there will be a time there for people to come and testify if they want to. And so that will be going on. We'll be talking about the budget. I think one of the school board members wants to talk about maybe a school bond on the November ballot. And so there will be, but you can talk under audience participation on any subject. Terry, go ahead.
So last week went to Republican Women's Meeting, and Kathy McCullum, who was one of our very conservative school board members, brought up the fact that we have a lot of, just a minute.
Just say what it is, Terry.
I will, but I can never remember, I can't get the letters right, and LGBTQ books in our libraries, and all they are is pornography, sexualizing our children. I don't even have words for how bad this is. They're in the...
I'm from Denmark, it's bad.
It's in our junior and junior high and high schools that I know of. I don't know that it's in any of the elementary schools yet. Loki Tobin, who is a senator, has a bill that sex education is to start in kindergarten, K through 12, we taught K through 12. Anyway, I wrote up this whole long thing about these books that are in the schools. And Kathy gave me the names of 4 books. And you can go to booklooks.org, and there's a description about the books, and then there's paragraphs in there about the books. I have the information. If you want to look, I'm going to lay it up there, and you can take photos with your cameras. I'm sorry I looked. It was the most disgusting, horrendous garbage I've ever read in my life. It's out and out porn, it's rape, it's incest, and these books are in our schools, and we've got to get them out. There is a school, there is a committee working with the school board to get these books out of the schools, but it's a process. I don't know for sure all the schools that they're in, but I know they're there, and we've got to do something to get them out. It's absolutely the most vile, poisonous thing I've ever seen in our schools. You want to know where our money's going? You want to know where that money's going? It's going to pay for this type of crap. Sorry, Anna. Stuff, and it's going to pay for our liberal school teachers that have the gay, LGBT, whatever stuff, the rainbows, all of this paraphernalia up in their classes, and they're shoving this agenda down our kids' throats. And we have to stop it. And most of us here are grandparents, and if it takes all the grandparents to stop this, we need to get it stopped. We have to join together. We've got to get it stopped. Go to the school board borough meeting tomorrow night. testify about it, tell your kids, and I'm to the point, I'm gonna ask my daughter to pull her 2 daughters out of the public school system, because we don't raise our kids that way.
So can you get these 4 books to the school board meeting tomorrow?
I don't know that I can go in as a grandparent and get those books.
You paid for them.
I did, we all paid for them. I will ask my daughter, I'll ask my daughter if she can get them.
If you can get them to the meeting, I will show up and testify, and I promise you there will be results.
Well, I think you can look them up on the website she
Yes, you
gave
can.
you to see which ones there are.
Physical books at the board meeting.
Yes.
I will, pardon me?
I say to pull them out and walk into it and say, I brought these from the library.
Right, I agree. It impacts it does have an impact. I will do my best.
16, you can't do it.
I will do my best to get my hands on some of the books.
We faced this in Colorado 15 years ago when I had my first kids, and we defeated that crap.
Watch your language. This is G-rated. We're in the church. We honor God.
Okay, well,
No vile language.
I'm a pastor, ma'am, and God slapped the money changers and threw them out
Will you
for
please-
violating his law.
Will you please sit down,
Yes,
sir,
ma'am.
please? Thank
Listen,
you.
the only way you're going to stop that agenda is 2 ways. Go in, get the books, and walk out with them. Number 2, get the books in a digital image and show up and start showing those digital images. Because when the school board has to look at those digital images, they will back down.
We have a school board that's very well aware of what the books are, sir. Here, CJ, yes. Go ahead, Terry.
The school board's not the problem. We have a very conservative school board, and they
but
are.
they can pull those books.
Okay, we'll try and get our hands on the books. I put the lookbooks.org list on the table. If people want to look at them, you can, but I'm really sorry that I did, but I'm glad I at least have an idea of what's going on in the schools now.
I just caution everybody about handling these books because the state law states 16 years of age for adult content, a child below that age. If you have a child pick that up, that person providing the book to that child is in violation of a felony. So be careful. Don't send kids in there to go get the books for you. You can walk in there as an adult, check out the book, raise a stink, whatever you need to do. But don't give the book to a kid because there is a state law that prohibits the transportation or distribution of pornography to underage children. And the age limit is 16, I think, for adult content.
So you don't want to be culpable in what you're charging them of doing.
Okay. All right, Larry and Ron.
But by all means, make sure you file charges.
Does anybody know Dr. Jake Blaskovic? You know that name? He's the guy that is, if you can't hear me, no.
I can.
Well, we're recording it, so the people
All right.
online.
He's the guy that was, or that has somehow or another gotten on the Matsu School District employee list, or contracting, I guess it's contracting, according to Tom a while back. Which, by the way, we had the school district president here. That's a good place to address a lot of this. But Blaskovic, his mission in life is to find homosexual children and transgender children. That's what this guy does. He's a psychologist. He is a homosexual. So he's got a mission and he has a reason. He comes out of, he was hired by the school that the Chickaloon Indians have. That's where a lot of this garbage is coming from. He got in, he had 6 schools in this school district that he was quote unquote advising. I don't know how many more, but 50 Cent says the reason these books are there, he's the credentials behind it.
And Ron, did you have a comment?
You know, our school board's taking a lot of heat, but I want to point something out. We have a very conservative school board right now. And we have a very conservative school board because the Matsu Republicans and Matsu Conservatives have worked together to keep a conservative school board. I want to tell you about this book issue. One of our school board members, this started with our school board, it didn't start from outside. One of our school board members saw this. Kendall Cruz called me up and said, Ron, we've got these books in the library that are there. Would you come and testify? Well, people don't remember it, but I came and testified that night, and I was the only person to testify about the nefarious books in our library, school libraries, because the school strike was going on. So the people testifying about the problems with no bus transportation overshadowed us. But the same night that I testified, and you'll remember this, the same night that I testified about the books in the district, a half hour later, the library collapsed on the Palmer City Library. The library collapsed on the children's section where these books are. Now, if that's not a God thing, you tell me what is. You'll never convince me that's not a God thing. But what I want to say is 6 of our 7 school board members are conservative Christians. Christian policy is just flat out good policy. We must work to keep our school board intact and our assembly also under conservative governorship. And I just want to say that buy raffle tickets. It's going to take $10,000 in November. It's going to take $10,000 in November to run the Get Out the Vote campaign. 2 years ago, we spent $9,500. The Democrats are coming after us. They're going to come after 2 school board seats, and I'm sure they're going to try to claim a couple of assembly seats. So we have to work hard as conservatives. But we do have a good school board. Support them.
I just want to add on the book stuff, just so everybody in the room knows, the State Department of Education and the State School Board State School Board, they have the overarching responsibility for all of the Alaska Public Libraries, and it's the State Library Association that sends those recommended book lists to the librarians in each school district. So there's guidelines that are missing at that level that is allowing the books to get all the way down to the local libraries, whether it's a local public library or a local school library.
Yeah, Dave?
Shifting gears with you just a little bit, and this is horrendous because what we're talking about is a huge attack upon our children, upon us, and everything else, on our society. But in our District 30, which is the west end out here, we've had several people that have came and testified. Ken Griffin, in relation to carbon tax credits. This is a tidal wave that is coming and has been communicated that a lot of people believe that it's already on a fast track to be able to be pushed through the House and the Senate, which the Senate, we don't have that much strength there in the Senate. And if this thing goes through, you give it 10 to 15 years and our nation is going to be under. I'm telling you, this is so serious. It'll be a new financial currency that will be there. It's all related to the carbon tax credits. Really pay attention. Facebook has already taken down the session that we had where he spoke at Sheep Creek Lodge. They've already taken that down. Also the one that they had, I believe, in School of Government right here.
Yeah, we did 2 weeks ago.
They've taken
I haven't seen that it's been taken down.
It's been
I'll
taken
check it.
The one in Sheep Creek is still up on YouTube, but the one that was done here for the Alaska School of Government was taken down by YouTube, claims of medical misinformation.
Right. And so I heard this information back from Ken, and I know that they took ours down on Facebook that we had with District 30. So it's still up on YouTube, but you can still get it on what? Rumble? You can still get it on Rumble?
Still get it on Rumble.
Yeah. So it's worth your time to really begin to educate yourself because this thing it's a cobra. I mean, it is deadly and it will destroy us. I know we're talking about the things with our kids, and I don't minimize that one single bit. But this thing is on a fast track for them to railroad this thing through, and it will destroy us, because really all we have in Alaska to export is energy, and it will destroy us. I mean, it will completely destroy us, but even more so, it will destroy our nation and everything, and the economy, and everybody who's done this.
That has to do with kids too.
Yeah, it's going to be with that. Every nation that has done this has been a horrendous burden upon them, on their taxes, $7 and $8 a gallon. It is a huge, horrible, horrible thing. So don't forget this thing. Really force yourself to study it. Thank you.
So Lloyd, are you referencing those ESG bills?
Yes, House Bill 49 and 50. If you were here 2 weeks ago, you heard the presentation.
They're both tied together, both of them. They really are. They say no, they're separate, but they really are tied together.
Dave wants to say something. Just to bring you up to date more fully on that, since we've had that, Mike Brown, the borough manager, and myself have had a meeting with the commissioner of Department of Natural Resources, because as you heard here 2 weeks ago, there's 111,000 acres in the borough that they are targeting, and we had some pretty strict comment right in. Mike sort of backed down a little bit because he has different bosses than what I do, and but we put the commissioner very much on guard that he's going to come in to our borough and do that. So anyway, Dave.
That's a wonderful segue. My name is Dave Maxwell. The reason that's a good segue is because you do have different bosses. Those are called your constituents, and that's what Mike Dunleavy's not listening to. And here's the issue. Carbon credits, where did it come from? Right out of the mouth of Mike Dunleavy. That's exactly where it came from, and it came after his election bid. Didn't say anything before that. Here's the next thing, and this one really gets on my nerves. That House Bill 105 and the other one was 69 about the sex education thing. If you just wrote that bill for what it really is, it would be so graphic we wouldn't want to be talking to each other in those terms. That's a problem. They've neutered it down to the point where they're not telling you what it is, but get the book. Young lady, you're right. You're exactly right. And here's the deal. Mike Dunleavy knows that book as well, and he knows it's against the actual law. Mike Dunleavy also has an Attorney General, Trey Taylor. Why is this not being addressed as a prosecution issue, not a bill issue, which is why I argue with Shelley Hughes. We do not need a bill. We need a prosecution.
Exactly.
There you go.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, I normally don't go step up to the front of the room, but I've got a couple of different things that I want to get out here today. First off, SB 88 defined benefits, and that they are pushing through our legislation down there, and Gino is taking testimony on SB 88 on Wednesday at 1:30. Please call in and give testimony. It is in Labor and Commerce Committee at 1:30 p.m. on Wednesday. They are only hearing from those whose pockets it will be lining. On a different subject for what Lloyd was talking about for the carbon credits, those videos are all on Facebook right now. YouTube only banned the School of Government one for the carbon credits. That's the only one that's not findable on YouTube, but everything else is also on Facebook already. Now for my personal issue that I want to bring up. My First Amendment rights have been attacked over the past weekend. This argument or this battle has been going on for me for about 3 years now, but I've been finally served with legal documents bringing me into court over my First Amendment rights. Our freedom of speech, our freedom of express, our freedom of religion, and our right to regress our grievances to our government are under attack. That is exactly what this lawsuit is all about. It is cancel culture trying to shut me down. When this all started back in 2020, I watched the repercussions of what I had put into print cost me dearly. 4 long, hard years battling with our government making the inside connections to make sure that I was Johnny on the spot everywhere something was going on in our state that mainstreams would not cover. Once I put this article into print, I found all of those connections completely cut off, because the group of people that are out there that I exposed, the deep-seated corruption that was happening within our state and is still ongoing today, they came after me and made sure all of those backdoor, so to speak, connections with our insiders with the government that feeds you that information, all clammed up and stopped. What I'm here to ask you guys for today, and if you guys can help me, I have to find legal representation to battle this case. It is still undetermined if I'm actually going to fight it. I have about 18 more days to respond to give some sort of direction of where this case is go. But I can tell you right now, if you guys know me well enough, I want to fight this darn thing tooth and nail. I want to take it all the way to the Supreme Court, and I want to ram this lawsuit right back down their throats. And I need your guys' help to do that. First step is coming up with the money to cover the attorney to get this case going in the right direction. So if you want to donate to my website, go to Politadick.com, or if you just want to say hi to me later on after the show, just stop by and grab a hold of my hand. Thanks.
If you're man enough to poke the bear, you better be man enough to fight the bear. You called me out in that article. And so I'll fight you.
You guys all had 2+ years to add any corrections to that article. I gave multiple opportunities for the folks out there to add any corrections or anything that was misstated in it. Not once has anybody provided me anything that says that that article was not correct.
This does not belong in this venue, Madam Mayor. So let's stop this right now. This does not belong in this venue.
Okay, anyone else have any announcements? And you can tell it's never dull. If you'll all stand, please, I'll do a closing prayer. Well, we have to have some fight in this, right? That's right. We have to have the fire in our belly to be able to stand, and so Lord, we just thank you, first of all, that we are able to gather freely, Lord, in this country. This country, Lord, that we believe that you gave to us, Lord, and this state and this community, Lord. And we will continue to fight, Lord, for righteousness to rail, not only in our community, but in our state and in our nation, Lord. And Lord, for each one of us, we will complete the assignment that in the talents, and use the talents and the giftings that you have given us, Lord, to be able to bring glory to your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
This is an attorney here in town, super nice guy. He may discount you or do you pro bono.
Okay.
He's an old veteran. He's got issues from being in the war, but super nice guy, and I've dealt with him in the past, and I highly recommend him. So.
Thank you. Thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in here today. Please like, share, make sure you click that bell to be notified every single time. You can find this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all at Politadick, or watch it at Politadick.com when we're live. You can also find this at Politadick on Rumble here within the next 6 hours. Please go to our website at Politadick.com/support. Help us grow. Also help fight the legal battles that we're about ready to be facing. Thank you guys all for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Again, like and share. We will see you guys all the next time.